And from China, Lu Wei, who is 5th after 4 dives, a veteran of this Chinese diving team, and she's long been in the shadow of teammates Qin Chao-Cha and Zhou Zhihong, but coming to the forefront now as we're at the World Championships.
This is her first optional dive. It's an inward 2.5 somersaults in the pike position. That was excellent. That was a terrific dive. Get big scores, but we've seen it before from the Chinese, and especially this particular one. Lu Wei in the World University Games had a huge lead doing dives like this, and then blew her last couple and fell down in the standings.
Well, good scores for Lu Wei, 8s, 8.5s, and a 9. That'll move her up in the standings. Alla Lobankina of the Soviet Union. She has the highest degree of difficulty in optionals of the finalists.
Well, we saw her in 1983 as a 16-year-old at the World Cup doing these dives. And that was so-so. That's the kind of dive that the judges are probably going to give like 5s and 6s to. She does the most difficult dives. This is a forward 3.5 somersaults in pike position. Just barely makes it before she hits the water. You can see 5s and 6s. In diving, anything better than a 7 is a good dive. This is just a little bit less than that.
Michele Mitchell of the United States. She was the platform diver of the year last year. Age 24, the oldest performer in the finals.
Remember, this is a 10-meter tower, 33 feet up, and she's on her hands. That was an excellent dive. This is the type of performance she needs to move back up into the standings, and she's quite capable of it. She's probably one of the only woman divers in the world capable of getting 10s on a dive. That was excellent.
So for Michele Mitchell of Scottsdale, Arizona, good numbers, including a 9, but mostly 8s and 7.5. So 7 is a good dive. This was well above average. Very good dive for Mitchell. Now, teammate Wendy Wyland, who is 7th after 4 dives. Hometown of Boca Raton, Florida. Wyland was the world champion 1982 in Guayaquil.
Right straight in. That was the inward direction, 2.5 somersaults. Wendy has been inconsistent in diving. I mean, she can do all these dives and land straight up and down just about every time. And here this one just over-rotated a little bit, but still pretty close. Going to be a good dive.
So you throw out the low and the high, and then you take the other 5 scores, multiply them by your degree of difficulty. Essentially, that is how the scoring is figured here at the World Championships. That was a good dive for Wyland. Now, also from the Soviet Union, Anzhela Stasulevich.
This is the same dive that Wendy Wyland just did. A little slow somersaulting. You saw Wyland finish the dive a little bit higher, but Stasulevich had a great entry, and the entry is the last thing the judges see. They watch the jump off the platform, dive in the air, and the last thing they see is the entry, and hers was better. She'll score a little bit higher.
Gao Ming of China was the winner in the women's springboard final. Now the leader here in the platform is Chen Lin of China at age 16. 15-year-old Gao Ming. Now we see 16-year-old Chen Lin.
That was excellent. The Chinese have started recruiting divers based upon their size, their shape, and the projected growth. And then they train them in gymnastics and diving and come up with some great athletes. This is a forward 3.5 somersaults. Nice tight position in the air, but a great entry.
And good scores to go along with it for Chen Lin. Coach Ron O'Brien knows His American team is behind at this point. There's Xu Yingming, who's the China diving coach, has been their coach since only April. And boy, what a start he's had in his first year. China is 1-2 after 5 rounds. 3 to go. It's a U.S. diving team along with Wendy Wyland.
Ron has been the Olympic coach of the United States since 1972 and has been Wendy's coach since she was 14. Wendy moved from New York to California to train with Juan. That's Bruce Kimball and other members of the United States. We'll see Bruce up in the men's platform event.
Lu Wei of China.
This is a reverse direction. She'll somersault back towards the tower, and watch how close she passes the platform as she somersaults. Excellent dive, but she was close to the platform. But if you miss it by a foot, that's just fine. Just so you make the somersault. And watch the first somersault right next to the platform. But she finishes and is straight in.
There's definitely a fear factor when you perform on the platform.
Well, the United States divers, Wendy and Michelle both, who trained together under Coach Ron O'Brien, talk about that fear and say that they really have never lost the fear of diving on platform.
Good numbers for Lu Wei. Now, Alla Lobankina of the Soviet Union. And a dual meet with the Americans in May in Los Angeles. She won. She beat Michele Mitchell. But then the following week, Michelle came back and beat her at an international competition in Florida. Here they are meeting now in Madrid for the World Championships.
This is an inward 3 1/2 somersaults, somersaulting toward the platform. Very low finish. In other words, she barely finished the somersault before she reached the water, but managed to get straight in. You know, the Soviet team in training all week before this competition has seemed to fight amongst themselves and seem to create some unrest, and they seem to be pretty inconsistent in their performances.
Michele Mitchell is quite a battler. She had shoulder surgery in February of '84, came back that year to still claim silver in the Olympics.
Oh, no. That's a disaster, and that's something that her coach and we did not expect at all. Michelle has been a great performer in these competitions, but she came to Madrid with high expectations. You'll see her just let go of the somersault way too early. She came for the first time expecting herself to win, rather than just coming and competing and relaxing and doing her best. She expects herself to win, and she's been uptight, and her coach has said she's been that way.
And disastrous numbers for Michele Mitchell. Wendy Wyland is 6th after 5 dives. The Americans still don't even have anyone right now in the top 3.
No, but Wendy still has the opportunity to move there. She has been the most consistent diver in the world in platform for years. That's how she won in 1982. That was a back 1.5 somersaults with 2.5 twists and a very good dive. In 1982, she did this dive after dive and watched the rest of the competition all do poor dives like Michelle did and left her in the victory seat. That was great. Right straight in, just a little bit too much splash, so they'll take off some for that.
The New Zealand judge gives her a 5.5, but all of the rest viewed that one as a very good one.
Well, he might have been at a different angle than the rest of the judges and thought that that was crooked or just not straight at the bottom. But that gets thrown out, so she has all 7 5s to count.
Throw out the low and the high, so good marks for Wendy Wyland. Anzhela Stasulevich.
This is the same dive that Wendy just did. A great entry, a little bit slow in the rotation, just like the last round. You saw Wendy finish the dive. In other words, complete the somersault and the twist higher in the air, but Stasulevich has the best entry, so she'll probably get higher scores.
19-year-old Anzhela Stasulevich of Minsk in the Soviet Union, and her marks are a little bit better than Wendy Wyland's.
That's because the last thing the judges see is that entry.
And now Chen Lin, the People's Republic of China, hometown of Peking.
This is an inward 3.5 somersaults, the same dive we saw Lobankina from the Soviet Union perform earlier this round. Somersaulting towards the platform. Well, the crowd has certainly been behind the Chinese divers. They've gotten great cheers each time, but that dive was not that good. You watch it again, and she's supposed to do 3.5 somersaults, and she'll not quite make 3.5 somersaults. She's not straight when she hits the water.
A wide range of marks for Chen Lin.
Mostly good scores. That scores over 7, and the dive was not complete. It should not have received scores that high.
She'll remain our leader. We're through 6 of 8 rounds. Back to Madrid in just a moment. Any more disappointed at this time than Michele Mitchell, the favorite going into the women's platform final.
Michele hasn't had a bad competition since the Olympics. This is Wendy Wyland. She's preparing now on one of the intermediate levels of the platform for her next round. She has been misconsistent in the competition, and she needs to continue to do good dives to move up in the standings.
Well, in 5th place with 2 dives to go, she's really America's lone hope for a medal in women's diving competition at the World's Championships. Now, this is Lu Wei of People's Republic of China.
This is a back 2.5 somersaults in a pike position. Great position in the air, but just runs out of room. She's a little bit short on the rotation. In other words, the dive is described as 2.5 somersaults. You got to make all 2.5, and she's just a little bit short of that. Great position in the pike. Flexible like any gymnast.
You may notice some tape on the back of her neck. She had an old neck injury flare up yesterday in prelims. She was up last night crying, her teammates told us, thinking she would not be able to perform in the finals. But here she is in 2nd right now, having an excellent outing.
Well, you're 33 feet up and you're hitting the water at over 30 miles per hour. It's not surprising she could have a little neck injury.
Lobankina of the Soviet Union. This dive, difficulty factor of 3.0.
This is the same dive that we just saw Lu Wei do. So gives you an opportunity to compare the Soviet style to the Chinese style. It's a back 2.5 somersaults in a pike position. I think the Chinese style is a little bit more fluid, but they look pretty similar in the air. And the result on the entry was pretty much the same. Both of them were almost straight up and down, but a lot of splash.
Lobankina has been on the international scene for a number of years, the 1983 European champion and the 84 gold medalist in the Friendship Games. Here, anything ranging from 6 to 7 fives for Lobankina of the Soviet Union.
And that angle gives you an idea of just how high up they are.
You know, Michele Mitchell has had an outstanding year diving. Why do you think this performance has happened today?
Oh, she came to Madrid uptight from the beginning. She expected to do well, and I think in her mind she expected to win, and we expected her to. And now she comes here thinking about that rather than just relaxing and performing. That dive was okay. It was a very difficult dive, but she left the somersault short. It was 1.5 somersaults backwards and 3.5 twists. The 3.5 twists are perfect. The somersault is short. She doesn't quite finish 1.5 somersaults. Right now, Michele must be questioning her own ability to compete in a major international contest, where she comes in as the favorite.
And now Wendy Wyland, you said she has been very consistent so far, but she needs something more than that right now.
She needs a great dive here to push up in the standings and still has to hope for a miss. Oh, the entry was perfect. That's a 10 entry. The takeoff is not at all, but the entry was perfect. Watch the jump. She kind of scoots away from the tower, doesn't jump very high. But the entry is absolutely everything you'd want.
Well, 8.5. I thought she might score higher than that.
Well, the entry, as I said, I think was a 10. I think you're probably right. I would have been inclined to give her a 9.
Anzhela Stasulevich, who is in front of Wyland with 2 dives to go. This dive only a difficulty factor of 2.4. In fact, she has the lowest DD, degree of difficulty, on the optionals of all the finalists, and that can add up and eventually hurt you.
Means she has to get higher judges' marks to make up the difference, since those scores are multiplied by the degree of difficulty. Great entry. But again, she somersaults very slowly, which is why she can't do those most difficult dives. She'll probably stay ahead of Wyland here, but not by much.
8, 8, 8 y medio, 8, 7 y medio, 7 y medio, 7 y medio.
You can see what the divers are doing here. That's hot water in that shower. She's trying to keep her muscles loose to continue to compete.
Good marks for Stasulevich, but our leader continues to be Chen Lin of China. And she has a broken wrist. She broke it while practicing in May. She didn't get her hands together in time before hitting the water, and that's where it happened.
You're diving off platform, you're 33 feet up, you hit the water over 30 miles an hour, and if your hands aren't together, your wrist is going to get bent straight backwards.
Right at impact.
This is the same dive that Wyland did so well. Huge splash. You saw Wyland do that dive with a near perfect entry. Her takeoff and somersault were probably better in the air than Wyland's. Watch the jump. Great jump, nice tight tuck. She just lets go too soon. Flattens her feet and has a huge splash. This again gives you an indication of how high and how close to the platform they come.
So for Chen Lin of China, not her best dive so far in this competition, but certainly she had built up a big enough lead where these numbers will not drop her in the standings right now. The Americans are hoping that Wendy Wyland can come through in the final round. She currently stands 5th, but is only 5 points out of a bronze medal. 2 spots out of a bronze medal with only 1 round to go. But she's only 5 points back, Bill. That can easily be made up.
You know, she has a chance for a silver medal, too, because the Chinese have missed before, and she has a good final dive.
Here's one of the competitors in front of her, Lu Wei of China.
And that was a bit short of vertical, but it's still got that rip entry. That's that entry where you go in and you get no splash.
You know, Lu Wei actually beat Chen Lin at the Chinese Nationals earlier this summer by 3/10 of a point. And here they are 1-2, but it's Ling leading over Lu Wei.
Well, you're also hearing great round of applause and support for the Chinese team coming into the competition. Each time they dive, great support, and that helps bump those judges' scores up.
The Americans have not heard that kind of support.
And the judges cannot help but be influenced by that kind of support.
Alla Lobankina, who also is in front of Wyland at this point.
This is her most difficult dive. It's a back 1.5 somersaults with 3.5 twists. Oh, and she has now opened the door for Wyland.
What happened on her entry there?
She looked like she completely fell apart. The twists were fine, but she let the somersault continue. It's supposed to be 1.5 somersaults. The 3.5 twists are there, but the somersaults continue on way past.
Lobankina 5s and 6s.
Wyland still needs a good dive to move in front of her, but the door is open.
And I think Ron O'Brien, U.S. coach, is aware of that, of course. Michele Mitchell now is in 8th. That dive in the 5th round, or 6th round, all but killed her chances.
You can't have a major miss. That was a good dive from Michele. But again, she did this dive in a competition against the Chinese for 10s in an earlier international meet. And here it's going to be 6.5, 7, maybe. She just barely finishes it before she hits the water. And really, it does not have her legs all the way straight.
Well, it wasn't the kind of performance Michele Mitchell had hoped for, but she plans on being back in the 1988 games at Seoul, South Korea.
You know, in a lot of ways for Michele, this will take the pressure off her. So coming into the Olympics in 1988, she might be more relaxed and perform better.
You can tell now the entire American team is looking up the platform and Wendy Wyland, who needs a good one here. Difficulty factor of 3.0.
Great entry. That could be enough. The reason I say could be enough is because she fell back from the platform on the takeoff, but that great finish helps.
She seems pleased. 7s and 7.5s for Wendy Wyland. Will that be enough, though, to move her up? She needs to move up, gain 5 points to capture the bronze. She'll have to wait and see.
Stasulevich is the next diver, and we'll see the competition right here. Wendy's pleased because she's done all good dives all day.
It's what she did at Guayaquil, you mentioned. Consistency.
Well, she did 8 dives in a row in Guayaquil, and the rest of the divers, some of the Chinese divers, were ahead of her and fell back behind her.
Anzhela Stasulevich of the Soviet Union.
Oh,
my.
She missed again. I think Wyland can move ahead of her, should move ahead of her given that performance. That was the same dive that Michele Mitchell missed earlier in the competition. It's a forward 3.5 somersaults in the tuck position. And she does not open up all the way and rotates right past 3.5 somersaults.
So Stasulevich and Lobankina, both of the Soviet divers, missed in the 8th round. And Wendy's checking out the scores. And I think she, well, she sees she's moved past the 2 Soviet divers.
Wyland has come back from injury, got the bronze medal in the '84 Olympics, and here she's regained her form and has at least a bronze medal in this competition.
Of course, it's unlikely, but Chen Lin has such a big lead. But if she flat out missed this dive, it could be silver for Wyland.
And this is the most difficult dive being done in the competition. We saw Wyland do 2.5 somersaults backwards. This is 3.5 somersaults backwards. There's your winner.
No question about that. Xu Yingming, the coach of China, has a pair of winners. And the United States has their first medal in women's diving. They were the favorites going in to the springboard and platform, but they walk away with only 1 bronze. But they have to be somewhat happy with that, considering the position Wyland was in.
Well, they're congratulating Wyland, but kind of nodding their heads, knowing the Chinese have again gone 1-2.
Bill, gold, silver for the Chinese in the springboard. And here in the women's platform final, Lin gets the gold for China, Lu Wei the silver. Wendy Wyland, the bronze for the USA, and Michele Mitchell finished today. Let's go.